Welcome to Jordan Drew, the Sports Crew. Drew's College Athlete Spotlight. We're on episode 13 already. After this, we only have 2 more episodes, and season 1 of the College Athlete Spotlight is over. So today we have on yet another Concordia athlete here, not Bernie Vanden Heuvel this time, Gideon Cain, a thrower for Concordia University, Wisconsin. Got to include the Wisconsin part as there are many Concordias, but Gideon, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. It's an honor.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I should say national qualifier Gideon Cain. We'll talk about it later in the episode. Had some big throws this past week, and hey, he's doing some great stuff. So let's get right into it, though. So yeah, Gideon Cain here. He's from Living Word Lutheran, and we'll talk about it. So for people who don't know, where is Living Word Lutheran?
It is right off of Highway 60 in Jackson, which is 15 minutes west of Cedarburg, getting near West Bend. Small school, 200 kids. Yeah, not much to it, but loved it.
That's where it is, and you know that's where Gideon did some track. So when did you start competing in track and field?
I started in middle school, but at that point it was, you don't really know what you're doing. You don't have a coach who's really knows what they're doing either. So my freshman year of high school, I really got into it. That's where I learned, the real form. I got really into the competition of it all.
You learn the art, they say, because
yes.
Shot put discus, that is truly an art to say the least. But what other sports did you play?
In high school, I was also on the football team and basketball. So 3 sports in high school.
Was track your favorite, or
It kind of changed as it went. It's a toss up probably between track and football. The tough thing was our football team was pretty bad, so didn't have track, the same success as track.
Track being individual, that's got to stand out. Talking favorite moments, is there a moment in track in high school that stood out?
Yeah, sectionals my senior year, which was when I qualified for state. It was a huge benchmark throwing day. I finally threw past 50 feet. And then a few other of my teammates, one of my teammates who's with me at Concordia now, Jacob Kelm, also qualified for state. We sent a really big crew that year. We almost won the sectional, which was crazy for a school of our size. So definitely that it was at Hilbert High School. So
that's
super vividly.
That is over, by where we are. We're more of northeast Wisconsin here. So like Manitowoc Valders is kind of, where we roam for the podcast. I mean, that's where my co-host Jordon Lawrenz is from Manitowoc. I'm from Valders, so to throw that in there as well. But do you have a favorite track? Is there one that stands out at the high school level that you always played at and you were like, yes, I get a throw here?
I'm trying to think back like where my good marks were. I did well at Hilbert because we had sectional there my last 2 years, but I always threw really well at Kettle Moraine Lutheran. Which was actually where we had to practice most of the days of the week because we don't have a full track. So I was really comfortable throwing there. Yeah.
There you go. And was there, that moment maybe where it felt like you were like, hey, I can do this at the collegiate level? Was it, maybe that sectional where you?
Yeah. It was probably conference my senior year because my junior year, I struggled. I don't even think I placed top 3 in shot put or discus. And then senior year, I made the jump to where I won, and it wasn't even there wasn't much competition. I won kind of without much resistance. And I kind of got the idea hey, I'm probably in a place where I could take this on to the next level. I could see myself throwing for the next 4 years.
You mentioned junior to senior year, that big, or your numbers going up. Would you credit, technique, off-season work? What happened?
Probably both of those things that you mentioned. I did a lot of work that off-season for football with conditioning, with strength. I got myself to a pretty lean weight. I was pushing the weights well though in the weight room still. And I just honed in on that technique. You have 3 years under the belt. So it's just, as track goes, you build on each one. And eventually you hit a point where you make a big breakthrough. And so that was my senior year.
That's what happened. And the rest is history. And, is there a teammate, in high school you got to give some love to?
Yeah, probably. Well, there's a few. I mean,
Name them.
there were none in my class. I was the only thrower in my class all 4 years. But Jake Groff was the upperclassman mentor for me. He was a junior when I was a freshman. He kind of showed me like that there was a sport that could be like as interesting as football because he was also one of my football teammates. And the fact that someone who was as good of a lineman as he was had another sport that he loved almost as much as, if not more, than football, kind of like opened my eyes a little bit. And he pushed me a lot. And then Jacob Callum, who I mentioned before, he's the one who I run with. He runs hurdles at Concordia now. Just when he joined track, the two of us, we would always cheer each other on in our different events. And it was cool to kind of go through the different stages with him.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Then let's talk now, kind of transition here into college because you're a senior here. So, this has been a while, but the whole recruiting process, how did this come about? How did you end up at Concordia in Mequon?
Yeah, my recruiting process probably isn't the most common. I was actually recruited pretty heavy for football to a lot of different schools. And having a school where I could do both was definitely something I was considering. But Concordia recruited me pretty hard for football. But I was also looking at like Oshkosh for football and then a few other schools where I wasn't even going to do any sports. But then I kind of realized that, I probably didn't want to be playing football for 4 more years. There's at the higher levels, it's every hit is harder. It takes a much bigger toll on your body. And that would be a long commitment to do with track. And as my senior year of high school progressed and I had all the track success, I was breaking school records and qualifying for state. I realized that, track was I definitely wanted that. So football became less important to me. I realized that, track was first, football second. And Concordia didn't really even recruit me that hard for track. I looked at going to Concordia, Nebraska because they're NAIA and I wanted to see if they would give me a scholarship. But when I had gone there, I hadn't thrown super well yet in my senior year. So they weren't going to offer me a scholarship. And then I went to Concordia, Wisconsin, and I talked to the coach a little bit. She was asking me how far I was throwing. And I was like 10 feet past, what they usually have as like their normal like shot putter recruit. So that kind of gave me some hope. I was like, oh, I can go and be successful at this level. But I kind of just made the decision at Concordia based off academics and some other factors. And I just knew they had a track team where I could go and compete there. So it wasn't anything particular that kind of brought me here for the track program. It was more so, what school can I go to that's right for me that I can still do track at? And that ended up being Concordia.
It's got to be, close too, location wise, right? I mean, not going to Nebraska now, even,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an awesome story with how you ended up there. Boom, at Concordia, Wisconsin. And let's talk about the track season, right? So now you're a senior. So it goes a while back. You kind of got a long record now, having those years under your belt, but how overall, being, the indoor season, the outdoor season, is there one you prefer? What are your thoughts?
That's a tough question. It kind of changes. Indoor is nice because it's controlled. You don't have bad weather days indoor. You might have some like slick rains that you don't like throwing on, but you never have to worry about wind. You never have to worry about rain. So that part of indoor is really nice. The meets are shorter, and at most venues, you kind of get to see what everyone else is doing because we're usually throwing on the infield. So you can see all the events going around the track, and it's really loud, which for some days, that gives you a ton of energy. But the downside of indoor is that it's only 2 events, shot put and weight throw, whereas outdoor you have shot put, discus, and hammer. I kind of flip-flop on if I like hammer or weight throw more, but not having discus is definitely a knock against indoor because everyone loves discus. But those days are also really long. You're throwing 3 events. If you pick up javelin, you're throwing 4. So it takes a toll on you. So they both have their pros and cons. But I would probably go with outdoor. It's just what I'm used to with high school. and having discus. It's just something's missing when you're not throwing discus indoors.
Yeah, the shot put and discus when you go to the collegiate level, do they get heavier? What are the numbers on? Do you know them off the top of your head?
Yeah. So on the women's side, there's actually no changes. They throw the same weight throughout. But the men's side, you go high school, you got the 12-pound shot, and it goes to a 16-pound shot. Indoor, most shots are the same diameter, just because you're kind of limited with like material, because you have the rubber casing, and then you have usually a lead filling. So you're kind of limited on the size of the shot put. But when you go outdoor, you can have bigger shots, you can have smaller shots, but they're all at 16 pounds. So because you can get like different diameter ones, it's not as tough of a transition from high school. It's just you're throwing something heavier. But for discus, it's a really tough transition, because you're going from it's a 1.2 kilogram discus to a 2 kilogram discus.
Wow.
So a pretty big weight jump, but it's also significantly larger. I don't know the exact measurements, but the diameter, I mean, you pick one up in high school and you're like, how can anyone ever throw this? And, if you're like me, you're done growing by your senior year of high school. And it's like, you asked yourself the year before, how can anyone ever throw this? And now you're being asked to throw it. So you got to learn. And it's a tough change. There's definitely a big learning curve with discus.
A lot of practice, a lot of time involved with that, right? Because those are, I knew the change, there'd be some sort of change. I didn't realize how significant 1.2 to 2 for the discus. That's insane. Wow. So, okay, let's talk your freshman year then. The outdoor season's what caught my mind. You took third in shot put at the NACC championship. So, right away making an impact there. And it seems like, it didn't take too long for that adjustment already freshman year, racking up, some conference recognition. So that's some awesome stuff, man. But just overall, the process from freshman, now to being your senior year, just looking training wise, how has it been different, from high school? Is the program, like, were you on your own program in high school for weight training, and now kind of being on, a Concordia program, or just, I don't know your thoughts.
Yeah. I'll start with weight training, because that's kind of separate from all the throwing training. Weight training in high school, I had a very good foundation. My throws coach was our head football coach, line coach. He knew what he was talking about, but he never actually threw. So he learned how to coach online just by watching videos, which is something that's actually really common because of all the resources out there. But he's great with weight room programming stuff. That was probably one of the strengths of our program. So he had us lifting, 3-4 days a week, which in season as a high school athlete, that's a lot. So, there would be meets where we would all be dog tired from our week in the weight room. But it really helped prepare us for the end of season. It got us comfortable with a lot of the different lifts, and just got us a lot stronger. So going into my freshman year at Concordia, I had a really good foundation. I was able to fit into the new Concordia program pretty well. In fact, so well that about maybe halfway through, probably towards the end of indoor, myself and a teammate, we went to our strength coach, because there's just one strength coach at Concordia for all the sports, and he makes all the programs. And we said, hey, we need something a little tougher. We want to be the best. So what can you give us? And so the coach was Rustin at the time. He was one of Concordia's national qualifiers in I believe it was the 100 meter. I think that's the one he qualified for. He's an Olympic lifting freak. He loves the Olympic lifts. So he gave us an absolutely brutal program. It was 5 days a week. You're lifting Olympics 3 days a week. So you have 1 week, you would go clean and jerk on Monday, snatch Wednesday, clean and jerk Friday. And then you'd flip it the next week, where you do 2 days of snatch and 1 day of clean and jerk. And then on those Olympic days, you would also do either a back squat or front squat. And then you would also do your bench, incline bench, or your military press. So you have all 3 of those lifts on the same day. It got to some crazy volume, but man, my maxes shot up after that. I was dead after every single lift. It was absolutely brutal, but I saw the effects. And then Tuesday and Thursday were auxiliary days. So they weren't light days. They weren't days off, but I really learned how to clean and jerk, how to snatch pretty well. Added on pounds and pounds to all my big lifts. But after COVID, Rustin left, and we brought in our new coach who started last year. And I've been working with him individually. He does the programs for every team as well, but he's been kind of giving me my own stuff. And using that foundation that Rustin gave me, I've been able to even add more and more to my lifts. I think this summer I added 100 to my squat, 80 pounds to my bench, and 50 pounds to my clean. So yeah, I've got quite a bit of a weight training experience now.
The numbers speak for themselves. Wow. What a program, established by, those two coaches, especially going from an Olympic, lift to like a compound. That's insane. Wow. But let's talk, with COVID-19, I know you mentioned that with how the pandemic, because you weren't in high school, you were in college when this was going on. And, that actually, that shortened, did that end up canceling some of the outdoor season then your sophomore year?
Yeah, so actually in the track season, the COVID shutdown happened the week of indoor nationals. So the last week of indoor was when everything got shut down. So we went home the week of spring break, which was that same week. And we were told we were going to come back, that athletes would still be able to compete. But long story short, everything got canceled. So we had nothing that year. I couldn't see coaches. We had no practices. Weight rooms were shut down. So we actually did, because Rustin was still there, he would host Zoom conditioning. So he would be in his garage. He would have everyone grab a backpack, put whatever dumbbells you had in your house in the backpack, and just train. So I took that time. I didn't have the weight training. I mean, I had what I could do there, but it wasn't substantial. So I took some time to just throw on my own. I picked up running, and I lost 20 pounds, I want to say. I cut off like 20 pounds of fat. But yeah, it was tough. So we went from having a full regular indoor season to just all being gone just like that.
Yeah, that was insane times, especially being for myself in high school is when we endured that. That was some wild stuff. And then, yeah, come back from this. Your indoor season 2020 to 2021, it went very well. You go to shot put, you go to Division III Elite Indoor Championships, and you play 7th, it says. And then also at the Aurora Grand Prix, you took first in shot put and weight throw. So just overall, how was it coming back from COVID? Do you think you were able to use that pandemic kind of as, time to work on yourself, more of, even though blessing in disguise, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. I was able to, like I said, I mentioned I'd lost about 20 pounds. So I really honed in on my diet, on my nutrition, got much faster, which, you see a lot of throwers and you don't necessarily realize how important speed is. And a lot of the fat that I had was kind of slowing me down. So I kind of got to a point where I was very lean. So that definitely helped. And then, I spent the time that I would have spent in the season throwing, I spent that time practicing, plus that whole summer. So I had so much time to practice just built up, and I was just kind of ready to get after it when we got to that fraction of an indoor season. We had only 3 meets when we normally have 9. And then I had that elite meet, which was a replacement for nationals, which was also canceled that year.
Yeah. And that's what the pandemic ended up making happen. But let's talk now your senior year here. Now we're officially there, and it's gone. Let's just say the numbers speak for themselves very well. You're especially just start looking at conference as well. The indoor and track and field championships for the NACC conference. And yeah, you took first in both the weight throw and shot put. And just, overall, how has it felt this year, being that experienced guy on the team, being like that leader? How has it felt?
It's actually been very up and down. If you look at the results, it might not seem that way. So we opened up in December with an early bird meet. and I hit 2 big PRs in that. And then we come back after winter break, and I actually had one of the track meets. I ended up having appendicitis, so I had appendectomy in the last week of January, I want to say. So I missed that meet, and we had another week off. So I was out for some time, and it took a while to come back. But like I had established some really good marks in December, so part of it was very frustrating to know, like I can be throwing this, but I had these setbacks. But then it was also kind of a comforting thing, a motivator to get back to that point, and just throw at the level that I knew I was capable of throwing. And we got to conference, and I finally felt good again. Like my strength was fully back. My form was back after being forced to take 2 weeks off. Yeah. And, senior year conference, you get a little extra fire in your belly. You want to go out and do the best you can. And I had some monster PRs on that day. So
you did indeed. And looking, records being set, right? Concordia record now is yours. That was at the Carthage Firebird finale, right? For the shot put.
Yeah, that was just a PR. That was the first time I PR'd since December. So I actually broke the school shot put record last year at that Aurora Grand Prix. And I was chasing on the weighted throw record, but unfortunately I just missed it. But the big throw this week was a long time coming PR from back in December. So it felt good to finally get that one. And it was a PR of almost half a meter, which is pretty substantial.
Insane. Yeah. And I mean, it was technically you broke your own school record, right? If we want to, for shot put. So not to flex, but you're at the point right now, you're breaking some of your own records. So that's some awesome stuff, Gideon. And yeah, we gotta, like I said, we gotta talk about now national qualifier. You want to talk more about that now? Winston-Salem, right? It's the place you will be heading for nationals, and just overall, you want to talk about the process, after your national qualifier.
Yeah. So nationals is something that I've had my mind set on that since I was a freshman. And it works differently than how it works in high school, like with state. So high school, state, at least in Wisconsin, you have to take top 4 at regionals. And then you go to sectionals, take top 4 at sectionals, then you go to state. In college, it is all based off of your mark. So if you are running a top 20 time, jumping a top 20 distance, or throwing a top 20 mark, you will go to nationals. And the end of last year, I made a push for nationals for outdoor in shot put. I missed it. Last year they had less entrants because of COVID. So I technically missed it by like 4 spots, but if it would have been the normal size, I missed it by 1 spot. So I was just outside the edge. So, that was the big motivator all summer, was wanting to get back, wanting to get that national qualifier. And opening up the season at Oshkosh, I was ranked number 2 with the shot put throw. It was like a 16:07, which I knew wasn't far enough to get me in there comfortably. But then, like I talked about, I had the setbacks before. So it was kind of a little nerve-wracking. I was biting my nails a little bit when I was forced to take some time off. You see all these people throwing past you, and you can't do anything about it. But I finally got back, and that throw this week was when I cemented it. The 16:07, that was my PR in the year, was like, it was looking maybe, I was sitting like 11th. I'm like, it's definitely not out of the picture for some people to pass me on that. And then I got that chance on Friday, and I just let that bomb go. And, I celebrated because I knew you don't know how far it is, but like, you could just kind of tell. And I just knew, I'm like, all right, that's it. I'm going to nationals. And then it kind of set in. So we had the selection, the official heat sheets, or the initial heat sheets came out today. So I'm ranked 8th going in. And I'll fly out on Wednesday, go compete on Saturday. Hopefully bring back some hardware.
Let's do it. Will this be live streamed for the fans? Do we know?
Yes, this will. Just go to the NCAA website, find the track and field page. They'll have all the events live streamed.
There it is, Division III national qualifier. And do you know what time you'll be competing at? Has that been announced?
Yeah, it's 2:00 Eastern.
2:00 Eastern on Saturday. So that's this upcoming Saturday. So we'll make sure, if we find it around on the podcast, we'll make sure to post it, to see if we can gotta get some people to watch this stuff, because you've worked your butt off for this, and we gotta make sure you get some attention for all this good stuff you've been doing. And let's talk academics to wrap it up here. You talked about, you chose Concordia for academics too. They do flex on your page. I did see valedictorian. So, what are you going for school here at Concordia for?
Yeah, I am a biomedical science student. I dabbled a little bit in chemistry. I was thinking about doing a double major. Ended up dropping that just because decided it wasn't worth it. But I'll be going to Indiana University next year to study optometry. So I'll be an eye doctor. That'll be a 4-year doctorate program. I'll head out there and start that in August. But yeah, Concordia has been great. It's pushed me academically. They have a very strong health sciences department, and I've enjoyed all of it. So it's been great.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, man. But do you see, does throwing, when you're done with nationals here, is that it? Do you plan to, maybe coach, still be throwing? What are the plans? Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, if possible, I get a year back of eligibility from COVID. So I would love to try and use that at Indiana next year. Obviously that's a D1 program, so I wouldn't be walking and breaking records there, but I think I could push myself to a spot where I'd be competitive. If not, it is what it is. I've had a great career, and I will definitely be involved in throwing. It's something that I go to kind of escape a little bit. When I need to think, I'll just go into a ring, chuck some discus, just super relaxed, and it takes your mind off of things. But I would love to be a coach someday. I've helped Living Word with some coaching, with some of my former teammates and some of the athletes that they've got going through now. So definitely something that I see myself doing in the future.
That's awesome. So yeah, Gideon, I wish you the best, academically and athletically. Good luck Saturday, man. This is gonna be a lot of fun.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you all for listening to yet another episode of Jordan and Drew, the Sports Crew, the Perfect Podcast.